Welcome back to Shifty's 49ers Talk. In this video, we're going to preview the Week 2 matchup between the San Francisco 49ers and the Minnesota Vikings. This should be a good one. We're going to get right into it, but first, let's run the intro. The San Francisco 49ers traveled to Minneapolis, Minnesota to take on the Vikings in a pivotal Week 2 matchup. The 49ers are road favorites by 5.5 points. That doesn't really surprise me, but what might surprise you is the fact that it's been 32 years, yes, 32 years since the 49ers have won on the road against the Minnesota Vikings, and we are absolutely looking to end that streak. We wanted to do it last season, and it didn't happen. So when we talk about the matchup, let's first get into some of the team news. When we look at the news between these teams, for the 49ers side of things, we do have Christian McCaffrey back at practice. He is limited. I don't think McCaffrey plays in this game. I think they're going to give him as much time as he needs to be fully healthy. We saw Jordan Mason be very successful Week 1, so there's no need to necessarily rush McCaffrey back. We know McCaffrey wants to play. We know how much he means to the offense, but I think it's better to save him for these first few weeks, let him get fully recovered, and then bring him back in and have his usual big role in this offense. You also have Talanoa Hufanga, who's limited in practice. You have D. Winters, the linebacker, limited, and Yetur Gross-Matos limited too. I don't think any of those guys play Week 2. A little bit of a bummer that Hufanga I don't think is going to go. Similar to McCaffrey, I think you're going to wait it out, let him become fully healthy before you rush him back. Hufanga is a big part of this defense, someone who was an All-Pro in 2022 under a similar defense like we run under Nick Sorensen, so I think you're going to bide your time a little bit, but I do expect Hufanga back within the next maybe couple of weeks. Some good news though, Juwan Jennings and Aaron Banks are back practicing and they should be good to go for Sunday. Now when we move on to the Minnesota Vikings, some of the big news is Jordan Addison. He has picked up an injury in the Week 1 game against the Giants, something that he also had during training camp. He is leaning towards being out for this game. We'll have to see though. You never know how things can change. Today is only Friday, so there is a couple more days potentially of practice to see if he can get healthy enough to play. Good news though for the Vikings, wide receiver Jalen Naylor, linebacker Andrew Van Ginkel, you have Harrison Smith, Garrett Bradbury, and Brian O'Neill on the offensive line. They're all limited in practice, but they're trending towards playing on Sunday, which the Vikings are going to need all the reinforcements they can get. Now when we look at this matchup, let's first talk about the 49ers offense going up against the Vikings defense. Now when I look at the 49ers offense, something that you're going to want to see the 49ers do is basically what they did in Week 1. And that's going to be leaning on guys like Jordan Mason, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. Establishing the run is going to be important in every single game that you will ever play, but also the Vikings run a lot of zone defense. Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, both excellent against the zone, being able to find soft spots in the zone, and when they do get the ball, being able to break tackles, gain those extra yards, and move down the field. I think Ayuk is going to be someone that you do want to get more involved, but you can't force the ball to him. When you look at this Minnesota Vikings defense, one of the things that really sticks out to me is Brian Flores is a really good defensive coordinator. They were stout against the run last season, but something that's really indicative of what they do is just how good and experienced they are in the secondary, running a zone defense. You look at guys like Harrison Smith, Stephon Gilmore, Byron Murphy, Shaq Griffin, like so many guys who've been in the league for such a long time in these zone-heavy defenses that they're not going to be fooled very easily. The Niners were going to throw some different looks at them, of course, and try and find weaknesses in that zone, and San Francisco is able to do that with a guy like Kyle Shanahan and Brock Purdy being able to identify the weak spots. However, it's not going to be easy. I think one of the things that, again, going back to the Niners offense, is if we can establish the run game, hit him on play action like we did against the Jets, it puts you in so many favorable matchups, and the 49ers just have so many weapons across the board that we really are like very difficult to defend if we're running the ball effectively. So establishing Jordan Mason will be the key there. But now let's talk about the 49ers defense going up against the Minnesota Vikings offense. Now, when I look at this matchup, I think on the 49ers side of things, absolutely key thing is going to be Nick Bosa, Leonard Floyd getting into the backfield and basically getting Sam Darnold to be a little bit jumpy, maybe to have to hurry his reads, maybe just to be a little bit unsure of himself in the pocket, force him into mistakes. I thought the Niners did an okay job at pressuring Rodgers in week 1. Leonard Floyd did have a sack, but I'd like to see a little bit more consistency, and potentially that means blitzing a little bit more than what we did in week 1, although ideally in this defense, you want Bosa and you want Floyd to just get after the quarterback. I think Hargrave and Malik Collins did a great job, especially against the run. If you can shut down Aaron Jones, all the better, because that's going to be something that Minnesota wants to establish, but really being able to get pressure to force into mistakes is going to be such a big thing for the 49ers. Also, look, they have Justin Jefferson, who is arguably the best wide receiver in the league. You are going to have to roll coverage that way, whether it's going to be Lenore or Mooney Ward on the outside. I do expect maybe someone like a Jair Brown to always be lurking relatively nearby, just so a guy like Justin Jefferson just doesn't absolutely destroy you in the passing game. And look, if we move on to the Vikings offense, Sam Darnold did a fantastic job in week 1. Yes, it was against the New York Giants, who are not a good football team, but still, it was an NFL game, his first game of the season. Week 1, crazy things happen, and maybe you call that a crazy thing. Sam Darnold looked amazing. Now at home, another week to practice with some of these guys. That could be a huge deal breaker for the Vikings if Sam Darnold can just kind of continue on with this wave of performance. Another thing that if I'm the Minnesota Vikings, yes, establish the run with Aaron Jones, but then if you can really, on play action, if you can stretch the field with a guy like Jalen Naylor, then you have Justin Jefferson underneath, maybe getting open, finding those weak spots in the zones, picking up those first downs and controlling the clock. That's going to be a key thing, what the 49ers need to obviously stop, but also what the Minnesota Vikings are going to want to do. I think a big thing too, when you look at what we've seen so far this season in the NFL, and we've only played one game in week 2 so far, but you think about it, something that's been critical time and time again. You look at the Buffalo Bills-Dolphins game last night, the Titans-Bears game, is that, and I think what's going to be stressed to Sam Darnold is, it's okay to take a sack, just don't throw that back-breaking interception. And that's going to be a key thing for the Vikings. They can't put themselves in bad situations. And that's kind of what happened to the Jets a little bit. The Jets, they fumbled the ball. There was the interception, the Niners that were able to make those takeaways. But the Vikings have to be a lot more careful with the ball if they want to come away with the win. Now, coming up next in the video, guys, I want to talk about some X factors for each team. And when I look at it for the San Francisco 49ers, to me, it's going to be George Kittle. We know Debo's going to get his touches, probably some out of the backfield, especially if McCaffrey doesn't play. You're going to have some targets to Ayuk, but I think this could be a George Kittle game. I don't think the Minnesota Vikings have the best linebackers in the league, especially compared to what we played last week. Last week, the New York Jets had CJ Mosley and Quincy Williams, 2 really good linebackers, both good in coverage. Minnesota Vikings linebackers not on that level, so maybe they look to exploit that with George Kittle. Kittle does a great job finding the soft spot in the zone, can also get yards after the catch. So I think this could be a George Kittle game. Maybe he goes for 80 plus yards and a touchdown. For the Minnesota Vikings, I think a big X factor is going to be defensive end / edge rusher. Is going to be Jonathan Grenard, who they brought in free agency, being able to get after Brock Purdy, put some pressure on Brock Purdy, maybe force him into some mistakes, or maybe some sacks, some tackles for loss to put the 49ers in bad situations, bad down and distances on the road in a loud stadium. That will be key for the Minnesota Vikings. Grenard came over as a free agent from the Houston Texans and is a pretty darn good pass rusher. So we're going to finish off this video, guys, and I'm going to give you my prediction on this. And I have the 49ers breaking the 32-year loss drought in Minnesota. I have the 49ers winning a close one, 24-20. A couple of weeks ago, you asked me about this game, especially the news when JJ McCarthy gets injured. I'm thinking the Niners maybe win this game pretty easily by maybe 10, 14 points. This time I think it's going to be a lot closer just with how well Sam Darnold played and how well Minnesota played in week 1. Yes, against a bad New York Giants team. However, that's going to give you a bunch of confidence moving into this game, and they're going to play with a ton of confidence. Maybe they do take some shots and they take some chances that they otherwise wouldn't have taken and can really give the 49ers a good game. But I do think San Francisco just enough talent to be able to get by even with some really good players not playing. So yes, I have it as 49ers 24, Vikings 20. And there you have it, guys. When it comes to this video, I do want to hear your thoughts in the comments below on what you think about this matchup. What are some of your favorite matchups between Niner players and Vikings players? What are some of the keys to the game, maybe X factors that you think are really important that I didn't mention? But there you have it, guys. Of course, I will be streaming this game live. I really hope you can join me then. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all that good stuff. And I'm going to head on out of here. But before I do, you know I'm going to say two things, and that is the butt counts, and I'll catch you guys on the flip side.